After professional interactions come the much dreaded social interactions and small talk. Most of the time, we meet a lot of people and we want to talk, we want to connect, but we are a little apprehensive. We are a little scared. How to do that in English? Lest we might end up saying something which is wrong. What if we use the wrong word? What if we end up making a sentence which is not grammatically correct? Sometimes this might also happen that you just do not know what to talk. Though you want to make a connection, but you do not know what are the things that you should be talking about. This module will be really of help if you are stuck with small talks or with social interaction. Imagine you're at a gathering, you're at a setting, and there are people around you. You want to talk, and you should. Talking, making conversation, small talk is the quickest way to get noticed. It's also important that you talk to people, you make conversations, because it is not only good for your mental health, but also in order to grow your community or meet with like-minded people. Coming back to what we were talking about, so imagine you are in a setup where you're meeting people for the first time and you want to make a conversation. What exactly do you say? Most of the time, people start with hello, I am. That's a great way to go about it. And that is also something I have discussed previously. But if you want to enhance your communication a little more, try these lines instead. In order to break ice, one of the most common tried and tested ways is to talk about the weather. You can do that by saying something like, isn't this weather just perfect today? And then you can add a line like, it's great to finally get some sunshine. This could be rain as well, depending on what would you like to convey. Or you could also say, this is quite the interesting setup here, isn't it? Now, why talk about weather? Because weather is something which everybody can relate to, irrespective of caste, gender, work. So rather than saying the weather is good today, ask a question. Because when there is a question, you are inviting the person you're talking to for an answer. And now, when you pose a question to someone, they are bound to give you an answer, and a back and forth communication can be established right there without having to think what to talk about. Next would be to talk about a setting or the place you are. So rather than saying, oh, the place looks good, again, there's nothing wrong in it, but we are trying to elevate our conversation. So we will be using elevated vocabulary and phrases. You could say something like, this is quite the interesting setup here, isn't it? See how we are turning everything into a question. When you turn things into a question in a conversation, it makes the person, the listener, open up a little more, and it sets up a basis for back and forth conversation. So you can say, this is quite the interesting setup here, isn't it? I love the decor. See how you're making a sentence after a question. So it's important that you open with a question. Next would be, you talk about the people around you. You can say, quite a crowd tonight. Looks like everyone had the same idea, which means looks like everybody wanted to come to this place or everybody wanted to attend a certain event. Again, asking questions will take you a long way when you're doing small talks or social interactions. Now, asking questions can be used as your opening lines. It can also be used to get to know each other better. Because when you ask questions, it shows that you are interested to know more. It shows that you are interested in the person you're talking to. And everybody wants to talk about themselves. This is the kind of work that I do. And if you find it very interesting or appealing, rather than just saying, oh, that's interesting, what you could also say is, oh, that's interesting, or oh, that sounds fascinating. What drew you to that kind of work? Or what got you into this work? So you immediately ask them a question so that they can talk a little more. So remember, we all love to talk about ourselves, and when somebody asks you questions, you end up talking more about yourselves, and that subconsciously creates connection with the person you're talking to. So asking questions in the middle of a conversation is very important. It shows interest and it steers the conversation into something which is more meaningful than just regular conversation. Moving ahead, imagine if somebody has gotten back from a trip or a vacation, rather than saying, what did you do? Or just saying, oh, I saw those pictures. You looked great. You could say something like, you mentioned you just got back from the trip. What was the highlight of your trip? Or what was the highlight of your journey? Or things like, did you get to do anything fascinating over there? Rather than just saying something like, tell me more about your trip. When you say, tell me more about the trip, it definitely shows interest. There's no denying. But it's not a very well thought out question. But when you ask that, please tell me the highlight, or did you try anything new over there? That makes it look that you have put thought into it. And that steers the conversation into a meaningful one. Now, if you want to discuss hobbies, rather than saying, oh, that's great, that's a great hobby, we will always add a question. How did you get started with that? Or what got you into knitting? Or what got you into painting? So when you ask people these sort of meaningful questions, they immediately like you, your likability increases, and at the same time, the conversation seems natural and it just flows without having to put in a lot of effort. Just the way it is important to ask questions in a conversation, it is equally important to establish any common grounds that you find between both of you. So imagine if you're talking to someone and they like painting as much as you do. You should definitely milk that opportunity to establish common grounds. Now, why is it important to establish common grounds? Because that way, again, the relatability and the likability increases. So imagine if somebody tells you that they like hiking. So rather than saying, oh, nice, or me too, add, me too. I am always looking for new places to hike. Do you have a favorite trail or a route over here? Now, if somebody says that they like a certain band or a certain type of music, you can always say, no way. I love that band too. Have you seen them live? Or have you ever gotten an opportunity to read that book? Have you attended their concert before? Anything, but always try to include as many questions as possible. Next would be, if somebody is talking about food, you can say, oh, I totally agree. Summer fruits are the best. Or it could be anything of your choice, like pizzas are absolutely amazing. Which one are you most looking forward to this season? Or do you have a favorite restaurant that you like to visit often? Or do you have a favorite variety? Anything, but try to interject it with questions. Finally, sharing about yourself. There's a way to talk about things which are related to you when you are in a conversation, so that it does not seem that you are the only person talking. Or every time somebody shares a conversation and you say, me too, I have had the same conversation, and you start talking about yourself, it should not seem like you're diverting the attention from their experience to yours. So there's a way to go about this. Imagine them sharing an experience where they went to a particular place which you have also been to. So you can say, that reminds me of a similar experience I had last year when I tried or when I did, and you can finish it off in a single line. So this way you establish relatability, you talk about your experience, and at the same time, you do not divert the attention from the person who had this experience and who is just sharing it with. Remember how you do this briefly. You do not keep going on and on and on about your experience. Now, if somebody has experienced something like some sort of a new experience, you could say, I have always been interested in whatever that experience has been. I actually tried whatever your experience has been. And how did that make you feel? Again, all of this to be done as briefly as possible. Another way to go about this would be saying, speaking of, for example, if somebody mentioned yoga, speaking of yoga, I recently started yoga and I am really enjoying it. And that's where you stop. Because a good conversation is a conversation where there is a constant back and forth, where there's an exchange of idea, where one person is not just listening and the other person keeps talking on and on. It turns into a lecture then. So please feel free to talk about your experiences while you're listening to someone else, but at the same time, keep it brief, ask a lot of questions, and pause and give opportunity to each other to speak in a conversation so that it can naturally flow.